I'm a server at this upscale French restaurant called Le Chateau Noir in downtown. It's the kind of place where the cheapest entree costs $85, and people make reservations 3 months in advance. The owner, Marcus Beaumont, yes, that's his real name, and yes, he's as pretentious as it sounds, likes to think he's running some Michelin star establishment, but honestly, the food is overpriced and mediocre at best. But what happened last night? Holy shit.
Ai m'estil processing i tal.
The setup. So it's a Tuesday evening, which is usually pretty quiet for us. We had maybe 15 tables occupied in our 80-seat restaurant. I was working the main dining room when this absolutely stunning black couple walks in around 7 p.m. The woman was wearing this elegant emerald dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and the man had on a perfectly tailored navy suit. They carried themselves with this quiet confidence that screamed, "We belong anywhere we choose to be." They approached the hostess stand where Jessica, our 19-year-old hostess, greeted them warmly. I could hear their conversation from across the room because it was relatively quiet. "Good evening," the woman said with a smile. "We have a reservation under Johnson for 7:15. Jessica checked her book. "Oh yes, here it is.
Table for two.
Right this way, please." But before Jessica could grab menus, Marcus appeared out of nowhere like some kind of bigoted ninja. This man has a sixth sense for when he can create problems, I swear.
Enter the begin.
Marcus is this short, balding guy in his early 50s who inherited the restaurant from his father. He's never worked a day in food service in his life, but acts like he's Gordon Ramsay. He's got this Napoleon complex and takes it out on the staff constantly. But what I witnessed that night showed me just how deep his issues really ran. "Excuse me," Marcus said, stepping in front of Jessica with this fake smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm terribly sorry, but I'm afraid there's been a mistake." The couple exchanged glances. The man, who I later learned was Dr. James Johnson, raised an eyebrow.
What kind of mistake?
"Well, you see," Marcus continued, his voice dripping with condescension, "Le Chateau Noir maintains a very specific atmosphere. I'm sure you understand. Perhaps there's another establishment that might be more suitable for your needs." The temperature in that room dropped about 20 degrees. Every conversation stopped. The other diners, mostly wealthy white folks, turned to stare. Some looked uncomfortable, others curious. A few had this disgusting look of approval on their faces. Dr. Johnson's wife, Maria, I found out her name later, placed a gentle hand on her husband's arm. Her voice was steady as steel when she spoke. "I'm sorry, but are you refusing to seat us?" "Not refusing," Marcus said, still maintaining that horrible fake smile. "Simply suggesting that you might be more comfortable elsewhere. This is a very exclusive establishment with particular clientele expectations."
De confronting.
I wanted to intervene, but I also needed this job. I have student loans and rent to pay. But I started recording on my phone, keeping it low and discreet. Something told me this was going to be important. Dr. Johnson stepped forward slightly. He was tall, probably 6 feet 3 inches, and had this commanding presence. When he spoke, his voice was calm but carried this authority that made everyone listen. "Sir, we have a confirmed reservation. We're dressed appropriately. We have the means to pay for our meal. On what grounds are you refusing us service?" Marcus's mask started to slip. "Look, I don't want any trouble. This is a respectable establishment. We cater to a certain demographic. Surely you can understand that your presence might make our regular customers uncomfortable." "Our presence?" Maria's voice was incredulous. "You mean our skin color? I never said anything about—" "You didn't have to," Dr. Johnson interrupted. "You've made yourself perfectly clear." By now, the entire restaurant was watching. Some of the other customers looked mortified. This older white woman at table 12 actually stood up and said, "This is disgusting. You should be ashamed of yourself." But Marcus was too far gone to back down.
"Ma'am, please don't cause a scene.
This is a business decision."
Depends.
Here's where it gets interesting. Instead of storming out or causing a bigger scene, Dr. Johnson did something I'll never forget. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. Not aggressive, not threatening, just calm and deliberate. You know what, Marcus? It is Marcus, isn't it? You're absolutely right. This isn't the right establishment for us. He placed the business card on the hostess stand. But before we leave, I think you should know who you just refused service to. Marcus glanced at the card dismissively, but I saw his face change as he read it. The color drained from his cheeks. Dr. James Johnson, Food and Wine Magazine, Senior Culinary Critic.
The silence was deafening.
Maria smiled for the first time since they'd arrived, but it wasn't a friendly smile. And I'm Maria Santos Johnson, Editor-in-Chief of Metropolitan Dining Review. If you've never seen a grown man's soul leave his body, let me tell you, it's quite a sight. Marcus started stammering immediately. Oh no, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Dr. Johnson said calmly.
You made yourself very clear. We be going now.
Wait, please, But they were already walking toward the door. As they left, Maria called over her shoulder, expect our review next week.
The aftermath.
The moment the door closed behind them, Marcus went into full panic mode. He started pacing around the hostess stand, running his hands through what little hair he had left. Do you know what you've done? He screamed at Jessica, as if this was somehow her fault. Do you know who those people are? Jessica, bless her heart, looked him right in the eye and said, Yeah, they're the people you just refused service because they're black. The customers were not having it either. That older woman I mentioned earlier demanded her check and left, loudly announcing she would never return. 3 other tables followed suit. By the end of the night, we'd lost about $2,000 in revenue just from walkouts. Marcus spent the rest of the evening frantically Googling the couple. Dr. Johnson wasn't just any food critic. He was the food critic. His reviews could make or break restaurants. He'd been featured on every major cooking show, had 3 James Beard Awards, and his opinion carried serious weight in the culinary world. Maria Santos Johnson was even more powerful in her own way. Metropolitan Dining Review reached over 2 million readers in our city alone, and her editorials had been credited with closing down restaurants for health violations and discrimination. The review that ended everything. True to their word, the review came out exactly 1 week later. But it wasn't just a review, it was a masterpiece of professional destruction. Dr. Johnson's piece in Food and Wine was titled, When Fine Dining Reveals Ugly Truths, A Night at Le Chateau Noir. He methodically dissected not just the discrimination they faced, but also the restaurant's mediocre food, overpriced wine list, and pretentious atmosphere. He compared the flavors to cardboard seasoned with arrogance, and described the service as hostile to anyone who doesn't fit their narrow definition of acceptable clientele. But Maria's editorial was the nuclear option. Discrimination dressed as fine dining. Why Le Chateau Noir has no place in our city didn't just criticize the restaurant, it called for accountability. She detailed exactly what happened, named Marcus specifically, and provided a platform for other customers to share their own experiences with discrimination at the restaurant. The response was immediate and devastating.
The consequences.
Within 48 hours of the reviews going live, our reservation book was empty. And I mean completely empty. People were calling to cancel reservations they'd made months in advance. The few walk-ins we got took one look at the protesters outside, yes, there were protesters, and kept walking. The story got picked up by local news stations. Then national news. Then social media exploded with hashtag Le Chateau Noir trending for all the wrong reasons. Marcus tried damage control. He issued what might be the worst apology statement in history. Le Chateau Noir regrets any misunderstanding that may have occurred. We welcome all customers who appreciate fine dining. No acknowledgement of wrongdoing, no real apology, just corporate speak that fooled no one. The health department showed up for a routine inspection and found multiple violations that had somehow been overlooked before. The fire marshal found safety issues. The Labor Department started investigating our employment practices after several current and former employees came forward with complaints about Marcus's treatment of minority staff members.
The final twist.
But here's the part that still gives me chills. About 2 weeks after the review debacle, Dr. Johnson and Maria returned to the restaurant. Not as customers, as the new owners. Turns out, Dr. Johnson wasn't just a food critic. He was also a successful restaurateur with 5 establishments across the country. When Le Chateau Noir went up for emergency sale, Marcus was hemorrhaging money and facing multiple lawsuits. Dr. Johnson swooped in with a cash offer that couldn't be refused. The first thing they did was fire Marcus. Not just fire him, they escorted him out with security while he screamed about how this was all a setup and threatened to sue everyone in sight. The second thing they did was call a meeting with all the staff. They offered to keep anyone who wanted to stay, with better wages and benefits. Most of us stayed. Jessica got promoted to assistant manager. Under new ownership, the restaurant was completely transformed. They kept the elegant atmosphere but ditched the pretentious attitude. The menu was overhauled with dishes that were both innovative and reasonably priced. They instituted strict anti-discrimination policies and diversity training for all staff. But the most beautiful part? They renamed it Nouveau Chateau and created a scholarship fund for culinary students from underrepresented communities. Every month, they host a special dinner where the scholarship recipients get to showcase their talents alongside the head chef. The restaurant is booked solid now. There's a 3-month waiting list for reservations. The food is incredible, the service is warm and welcoming, and the atmosphere is sophisticated without being intimidating. Where they are now.
As for Marcus?
Last I heard, he was working as a shift supervisor at a chain restaurant in the suburbs. His wife left him, taking half of everything he had left. He tried to open another restaurant, but couldn't get investors or staff. Word travels fast in the restaurant industry. He also tried to sue Dr. Johnson and Maria for orchestrating his downfall, but the case was thrown out immediately. Turns out, when you discriminate against people and they respond with honest reviews about their experience, that's not conspiracy, that's consequences. The lesson. I learned something important that night. Racism isn't just morally wrong, it's stupid business. Marcus was so blinded by his prejudices that he turned away customers who could have made his restaurant famous for all the right reasons. Instead, his bigotry destroyed everything he inherited and handed it directly to the people he tried to humiliate. Dr. Johnson and Maria didn't just get revenge, they got justice. They turned a place that represented exclusion and discrimination into a symbol of inclusivity and excellence. The best part? About 6 months after the takeover, Dr. Johnson was featured on a major cooking show, and they filmed a segment at Nouveau Chateau. During the interview, he told the story of what happened that night, how it led to them acquiring the restaurant, and how they'd transformed it into something better. Marcus apparently saw the episode. According to mutual friends in the industry, he threw his remote at the TV and spent the rest of the evening ranting about reverse discrimination to anyone who would listen.
Update, the full circle moment.
I have to share this because it happened just last week and it's too perfect not to include. A young black couple came in for dinner. Their first anniversary, they told me. They were nervous, clearly not used to fine dining, but excited to celebrate somewhere special. They ordered the tasting menu and were having a wonderful time. Near the end of their meal, Dr. Johnson happened to walk through the dining room. He often checks on service personally. He noticed the couple and stopped by their table to chat. When he learned it was their anniversary, he insisted their meal was on the house and sent over champagne. As they were leaving, the young woman was in tears of joy. She told me it was the most beautiful evening of her life, and she felt so welcomed and celebrated. That's when it hit me. This is what Marcus could never understand. Hospitality isn't about excluding people. It's about making everyone feel special. Dr. Johnson and Maria didn't just save a restaurant. They transformed it into what it always should have been.
Final thoughts.
Sometimes the universe has a way of correcting itself. Marcus spent years using his position to make people feel unwelcome and small. In the end, his hatred was his downfall, and the very people he tried to humiliate became his replacements. Today, Nouveau Chateau stands as proof that success comes from lifting people up, not pushing them down. Every night, I get to witness the joy of people from all backgrounds sharing incredible food in an atmosphere of genuine warmth and respect. And Marcus? He's learning what it's like to be on the other side of power, taking orders instead of giving them, being judged by others instead of doing the judging. Karma isn't always swift, but when it arrives, it's absolutely beautiful to witness. Edit. Thanks for all the awards and comments. A few people have asked for proof. I can't share the original video I took, legal reasons, but the news coverage of this story is all public record if you search for Le Chateau Noir discrimination controversy from last year. Edit 2. Dr. Johnson and Maria saw this post, someone tagged them, and gave me permission to share that they're opening 2 more restaurants next year, both with the same inclusive mission. They're also expanding their scholarship program nationally. Edit 3. For those asking about Marcus, he's apparently started a food blog where he rants about cancel culture and reverse racism. It has 23 followers, mostly bots. Make of that what you will.
Stay tuned out there, Reddit.
You never know who you're talking to, and more importantly, everyone deserves to be treated with basic human dignity regardless of who they are.